Welcome to the ZimmCast, a program dedicated to bringing you what's new in agricultural marketing. The ZimmCast is the official podcast of AgWired and hosted by Chuck and Cindy Zimmerman.
Hello and welcome to the ZimmCast. I'm Chuck Zimmerman. Before I go any further, I'm praying for all the people who have been devastated by the recent hurricanes, and especially those who lost their lives or homes and farms. It's truly heartbreaking to see the reports and realize this is going to take a long time for recovery, and that's if it's even possible. So in this episode, I'm going to share some audio from the recent Syngenta Media Summit 2024 that was held in the new crop protection facility in Greensboro, North Carolina. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be with a group of agricultural journalists and have personal time with Syngenta leadership. You'll hear more about the new facility coming up. I've created a virtual newsroom on AgNewsWire that contains photos as well as interviews and other audio for ag media to use. I've picked out the welcome we had from Jeff Cecil. He's head of North America Crop Protection Marketing, and that's in the form of a one-on-one interview about advancing innovation for the U.S. grower. After that, you'll hear closing comments from Vern Hawkins. He's Regional Director, North America President, and he focused on advancing American agriculture. So here's my interview with Jeff. First of all, tell me what you do.
Yeah, Chuck, I'm the head of marketing for North America for our crop protection division, and I've been with Syngenta about 30 years. So take care of all of our marketing campaigns, all of our pricing and strategy for our products.
Well, I think the first thing I'd love to have you just say a little bit about is the fact we're in a new facility that is actually still being worked on. I guess we're kind of one of the first groups to be able to come in here, which is we appreciate. Just tell us a little bit about this new facility that you're putting together.
Yeah, so we've been on this site for the last 50 years here in Greensboro. We've moved a few hundred yards to a new facility just recently, about 6 months ago. We started moving into this building. The building really is all-encompassing. So we have our all of our commercial teams here, as well as our functions, including R&D. We have our scientists here on site, lots of labs. We have a really good opportunity to collaborate across all the different functions on site so that we can be as innovative as we possibly can.
Well, using that term, innovation, is what I looked at as a theme for your opening talk here to the group. Tell us a bit about that in terms of where Syngenta has been and what you see for the future to continue the kind of innovation we've been doing.
Yeah, that's a great question because innovation takes on a lot of different meanings for different people. Having the ability to innovate for products has been a real success for Syngenta over the last many years. We've introduced more products into the industry in the last 10 years than any other of our competitors, which has given us an interesting place to be able to grow our business. But the innovation really starts well beyond the product, and it really starts with our customers giving us the needs that they have to answer the changing environments that they have and address their everyday needs. Our goal is to make products that are profitable for the farmer, that can give them a good return on investment, and they can see higher yields. In order to do that, we have to have the best-in-class technologies, the best-in-class people, and the best-in-class relationships across the industry. And so, having everybody here on this new site is part of that, to be able to collaborate, understand, and then build on our successes. So we're really excited about what that brings for the future. Having the opportunity to develop products in real time for the real problems is what it's about. But innovation goes well beyond that. So new technologies, we were just talking about AI and what that could do. Being able to incorporate those new technologies into the product development as we go is very important. So not just with AI, but being able to talk about technical different medias that you can use in order to develop products.
Describe the spectrum of different types of product areas that you are.
Yeah, so we're working on every different category of product. So we work on herbicides and fungicides, insecticides. Obviously, we're into seed care very largely, and we have a new tool of biologicals that's on its way. So we're really into developing new products that fit the need in every category. We're very fortunate to have two new technologies that are very close to market with plinazolin technology, which is a best-in-class new insecticide that will be coming very soon, and a new product, nematicide called Timerium technology, which is also on its way in the next months. So we're really excited to be able to continue our development.
Anything else that you thought this group here, a bunch of agricultural media journalists, anything else you wanted them to know about where you're at right now?
Yeah, I think the where we're at is we are with the American farmer. And we are trying to do our best to look down the road for what challenges to come. And we're trying to support U.S. agriculture in ways with new technologies, but beyond that, just our way of thinking, bringing in the opportunity to really collaborate with them and understand the needs they have every day, to look for the future and develop products. So, that's a big part of why we have the new site. The old site, we were there for 50 years. And like I said, it's a few hundred yards away, but it's 50 years old. And so, being able to be new, innovative, and creative takes a space that will allow for that. And we are really excited about continuing our relationship with the American farmer, as well as being able to drive change and effective foresight into what's coming.
Well, thank you very much, Jeff, for visiting with me here. We're in Greensboro, North Carolina. I'm Chuck Zimmerman reporting. Now you can hear Vern's remarks.
Thank you, Rusty, and good morning, everyone. So I understand you've had a busy day and a half, and first of all, I want to take the opportunity to thank you for making time to come listen to what Syngenta's up to, gain some perspective on some of the things that we're experiencing, and sharing your own wisdom and perspectives with us. So I'm going to sort of make the case for why innovation in our industry is at risk. You've probably seen bits of it through the presentations of the last day and a half. But I want to start with just sort of iterating what are the key elements of our strategy and help you understand why this innovation risk is so real, not just for Syngenta, but for our industry. And so you probably heard a little bit about the three growth engines of our strategy here in the U.S. For crop protection. New products is one of the biggest ones, clearly. So you've certainly heard a lot about the innovation. And that really brings value not only to our company, but to most every partnership that we have. And so that one's pretty clear. The second one's around targeted strategic partnership with retail. And you heard a lot about the strategy from the panels this morning around the importance of having engagement with retail and growers. And through and with the channel is something that we have a long-standing commitment to. We built trust and confidence because we understand that the retail chain has the ability to bring services to a broader segment of growers which are beyond our reach. They understand the differences and needs, and they have the capabilities and the investments to bring those services with our support. And so new products and innovation are certainly part of our value proposition to them, but there's a whole host of other things that they do with services, agronomy you heard about, and things that they need from us, that allow us to differentiate ourselves. And that's really important when you think about the type of market that we're going into. It's not only difficult for farmers right now, but it's difficult for retail because they have no growth in the marketplace at the moment, which means that they have to make choices about who they partner with and the supplier side, because when there's a no growth market, it means you take the business from somebody else or you accept decline. And so we've got to continue to work at bringing our value proposition, not just through innovation of new products, but through the way that we work with them and the things that they depend on us for. Then the third part of our strategy, so the third growth engine, is the digital ag solutions, which you've heard about. So this is something that we've been doing for over 20 years. You heard about this is how we engage with growers to be relevant with them in terms of their needs, help them with things like risk protection, not just innovation, services, agronomics. You heard about all of that. And They represent 35% of our brand of business today through our AgriEdge offer. So these are people that we know well. They're people that adopt our new products faster than the average marketplace. And so there's a significant relevance of innovation with this group in our strategy as well, because they depend on Syngenta. They have confidence in Syngenta. And so they're the ones that always are on the leading edge of our new technology and from an adoption perspective. And so the innovation kind of runs through all of those growth engines. And so I'm not going to show you some slides, but I'm just going to share some facts with you around what does the EPA problem that you've heard about mean, for agriculture. And so we are, first of all, the company that invests the most in R&D and crop protection. And so we're not the only ones that are experiencing this, but if we're experiencing it with the critical mass that we have, you can bet that every other company that's investing in R&D is also experiencing it. And I sit on the Crop Life America board, so in fact I know that everybody is, and the stats are public, so we can see who is and is not registering products. And so when you look at what's going on at EPA right now, it's been referenced that we made a number of visits. We know the backdrop of the Endangered Species Act. We know about the legal influence on the way that the EPA spends their times. Now the court is getting priority over work to defend the EPA's position against ESA before they do the work of registering products. And they'll tell you that the people that do that work are the same people that do the risk assessments for registering new products. That's a problem. We know that they're not funded adequately to do the extra work that they've been given. Our industry, through the last PREA authorization, contributed more money for registration to get more accountability and delivery. And so they signed on to that accountability, but they have not delivered. And there's not really an effective recourse for that. Fees just went up without any dialogue October 1st, for registrations. And so the productivity of the agency is not sufficient. The support that the agency has, from a funding perspective is not sufficient. And there's a whole series of layers of issues there, from retiring staff, inability to recruit because of funding, because of skill sets, because of interest in working for the EPA. And so the EPA, from a funding perspective, did not get support. Our industry took a position to ensure that OPP, the Office of Pesticide Programs, was funded because that's where the registrations happen. We made some progress, had some success with that, but in fact, the funding really hasn't materialized anything significant in terms of improvement. And so now what we have is an industry that is paying more for less results. The degree of difficulty to register a new novel mode of action compound is higher because the standards have been elevated. And now you're hearing with the ESA parameters, we're limiting the ability to utilize new products and innovation from a landmass perspective with buffer things that you've heard about. And so this sort of paints a picture of a smaller opportunity for sure. But now if I give you a couple stats, so reduced risk pesticides were eligible for expedited review. Always have been. What largely drives the reduced risk pesticide classification is that the new compounds have benefits versus the competing compounds for the same uses. Things like human health, ecotox, the parameters that the EPA does their risk assessments against. And so if you take our last round of reduced risk products just for Syngenta, which were registered 6 to 9 years ago, in our case, fungicides, the U.S. was the 4th country in the world registered for these compounds. That's kind of what we were used to in terms of the efficiency, the effectiveness, the quality of risk assessments from the EPA. There's probably 55 to 60 countries that have registered those products now that we registered 6 to 9 years ago. So Adepinin or Miravis brands would be one of those, Solatinol would be one of those, or Trivapro that you would know. And so the two compounds that we have in the agency right now, which you've heard about while you're here, planazolam and timerium, are well past their PREA commitment date and probably will be close to 2 years after their PREA commitment date before they're approved, if we're successful in getting them approved. And so if they were registered today, the first one we would be 21st country in the world registered. If the second one were registered today, we'd be the 14th country in the world registered. That begins to create a picture of what is the competitiveness of the American farmer versus the rest of the world for the best-in-class chemistry, lower use per acre, more specific in terms of the benefits it provides, and a better profile because it's reduced risk. And so this is what the EPA asked for. This is what all the people that challenge the EPA ask for, unless they just don't want pesticides at all. And we don't have a system now that enables the output of those kind of compounds. And if you think about what countries are in the list of the first compound, okay, Brazil has a registration. Brazil used to take longer to get a registration in the U.S. And now they have access to this technology. And you've heard about trade. And now you think about, so what is the true competitiveness of our farmers in the U.S. continuing to be on the leading edge? And then let's talk about the financial impact of what I just described. So we're the largest R&D investment company in the industry. The cost to register a compound is well over $300 million now. We used to get a compound through the system with approval in 10 to 12 years. I think you probably saw earlier this week. It's 3 or 4 years longer than that now. And so the pain of that particular situation is you lose value on the front end and you lose value on the back end. So the front end, we can normally get to peak sales within a 3-year period. So you're talking easily, a $50 million plus number for a blockbuster compound, which is typically what we're developing just because of cost efficiency and the extra cost of getting it there. And then we have a data comp system here in the U.S. that many of you will be familiar with, which allows us to get protection on the value of our data as followers come in. And so if you lose the 3 years on that, in addition to the sales that you lose in the first 3 years, you have to ask yourself, can you continue to invest in R&D? And if you do the math, it'd scare you. And I'm not suggesting that we're going to give up on R&D, but we're at a critical point where we now have to engage with our government in a way that they have not been engaged before. The EPA, in my opinion, is not going to fix themselves. We've made the visits. You heard about that. They give you the excuses. They've gotten comfortable with the excuses. Some of the excuses are real, so you can't say that they're not in a difficult spot. The courts do have control of them because somebody's made a decision that general counsels are going to have more authority and influence in their organization than the scientists making the regulatory approval decisions. So we've got that whole challenge, with the EPA, and we've got to find a way to get the risk assessment piece normalized. But when you look at the endangered species piece where we're limiting the use pattern and the time constraints, we've got more problems than just the risk assessment argument that we've typically had dialogue with the EPA on. And so when we look at the cost of R&D and now a limited output in terms of the return, for the suppliers or the R&D companies that are investing, and you think about what happened in Europe. So we now have a global R&D investment pool, which has a minimal return from Europe and an unpredictable outcome for the U.S. And there aren't very many other places in the world to lever your revenue and return from other than Brazil. And that just creates a competitive dynamic for American agriculture that you really don't want to think about. And so we've got to find a way to go beyond the EPA. We're going to have to engage Congress, probably through the ag committees, and help them understand this picture, because it's not just the Syngenta picture that is the reality. Every major R&D supplier has a story just like the one I told you. We just happen to have more of them because we have a richer, deeper pipeline. And we probably also need to engage the USDA, because part of their mission is about the American farmer being productive, being competitive, and this is not something that's in the dialogue adequately at the moment. And so I'll certainly continue to engage with CropLife and work with the industry as a whole. We're going to need farmer groups involved. You all probably have a role in helping people understand that if we don't address this in the next 2 to 3 years and we lose the investment in R&D, it'll be hard to get back. It will be hard to get back. Now, we're doing some investment in biologicals you heard about, and I think there's tremendous potential in biologicals, but not to replace crop protection, to supplement crop protection and help us find new opportunities for soil health and conservation, ag and sustainability, and the other things that we talked about here. And so we're going to stay committed to that. But Europe is on the biologicals replacement strategy for chemistry, and it's not working very well for farmers. They are using products today that don't perform as well, and that changes their financial returns as well. And so I share this with you because the industry is now, after having a really good discussion at the Crop Life annual meeting, probably a month ago now, I guess, is how do we engage with the people that need to help us make this change in government. And you heard Mary Kay, getting anything done in government right now is difficult. And so there's a debate around, do you engage before the election because the EPA person will be appointed if the administration changes? Do you wait and see what you have? And so those are some of the conversations we're having. But my personal opinion is we need to engage soon, and we need to make the innovation risk not just the output of the 2 compounds that we're waiting on to bring to farmers, because if you lose the innovation engine, American agriculture is going to be the loser. And so this is something that is probably at a more concerning state than it's been in my career, and I've been around a while. And we've got to find a different way to influence it. So mostly what I wanted to share is that risk, that there's awareness of it, there's a strategy being mobilized. We're going to need our industry to collectively work together to change that paradigm that we're now finding ourselves in. It's going to take to the questions on ESA, it's going to take a challenge to ESA. It's going to take a challenge to the court's authority on things like FIFRA. And I don't know how quickly we can do that, but we're on a clock. And if you just think about the return, if we cannot make progress in this in a few years' time, our company has to say, can we justify the level of investment we're making in this industry? And this is all we do. So we're not going to give up on it. We're a committed ag company. But I really worry about the innovation access for our American farmers in the interim, because other countries are getting these products approved. And I'm worried about it for the long term in terms of, can we continue to be the highest productive farmers in the world, because that's where our current status is. So I think I'll stop there and just give people a chance to ask questions about that or anything else you want to. If you have other questions about the company, I'm also happy to address those. But I mostly wanted to focus on the innovation and its influence on the American farmer's future.
Well, it's really a compelling presentation you've given to us for those of us that really expect new chemistries and new seeds and everything that's coming on to the industry. What is Crop Life doing about this, Vern? You said it's going to take a lot of muscle. Is there an activity going on there?
There is activity, and so we had the annual meeting in September. We come together for a retreat every November, and so a lot of the finalization of the tactics will be worked there. But what we've done so far is just try to project what would it look like in a Harris administration versus a Trump administration broadly. And then we've sort of isolated this reality of the EPA is asking for more money. Industry is funding the EPA at a higher rate than Congress is from a percentage increase, and we've got no output from it. So all the accountability measures that went with the last PREA agreement have not been delivered upon, and there's been no dialogue with the EPA around their accountability against it, and they're too busy, kind of, is the response. So what Crop Life will be involved in is really that campaign I just described. And we're at a point now that I think Crop Life sees the value of going together as an industry. I'm not worried about that. It's just how fast can we mobilize. So we've decided that we're going to start pushing on it now because it's important to our company, it's important to our customers, and then we'll try to get a more coordinated plan coming into post-election. But I hope that we do something related to engaging the ag committees and the administration planning committees, for both the Republican and Democratic side before the election results are known, just so there's awareness. But as you saw, we are not in the crosshairs of most important issues to be voted on, dealt with, and that's something we've got to change somehow. So more to come.
Vern, thanks for the presentation. Very enlightening to just hear where the rubber hits the road. I've been following this, especially on the ESA side, and how it's affected dicamba and whatnot. And, as you were talking about the PREA fees, it reminded me that the EPA, as I've been talking to them, has sent me, information about how far in the hole they are when it comes to budget and whatnot. And even with the increased PREA fees that you were referring to, I was told they're still $10 million behind what they expect to collect. Those fees coming from companies such as Syngenta, $10 million behind for FY24. That just tells me that not only is Syngenta struggling with the idea of R&D and innovation, but as a whole, the industry is saying, we're not putting new products out because of the timelines and the ability. So, as an industry, looking, you can only help them so much, right, before they can have to help themselves. Where do you see that coming to a head as far as how far can R&D have to take off the front end and the back end before it just doesn't make economic sense for you anymore? Are we talking 10 years, 15 years? I mean, where is that? Our farmers need to have things pencil out. Where does that pencil out for Syngenta?
Yeah, I mean, if it stays like it is, we're inside 5 years where you will see a significant reduction in R&D investment. So some of the things that are not occurring in the EPA, you probably heard about this week, the transparency and the communication between supplier and the reviewers is not happening like it once was. There's certainly not delivery against the goals and the commitments, so there's no accountability, and there's no recourse right now because they're just blaming it on funding and court direction from their general counsel, and the Ag Committee and Congress at large is not funding the EPA at the macro level. And if you're not investing in your people and filling your open headcounts in skill sets that are actually quite specialized, it's hard to catch up because their attrition is actually at the same rate or faster than their replenishment. And so if we don't address this within a 5-year window, you will certainly see a material reduction in R&D investment. And if you go back and you look at what's happened to consolidation of our industry, of the companies that have come together, Corteva came together, and what happens in those, you normally lose R&D investment because they're looking for efficiency, and they don't stop spending in R&D, but the aggregation of the two companies ends up with a smaller number. And there's not more efficiency coming in the output side. There might be some efficiencies internally, but if you think about the economic downturn we're now in, this is not an environment for people increasing their R&D investment. People are trying to shore up expenses in every category, and I expect you will see a downturn in R&D investment in 2025 just because of the economic challenges. And then if you sort of begin to see less confidence in the access, to markets, the U.S. is, it's still the most important market in the world, and we are now vulnerable as a predictable and accountable regulatory approval country. And that's not a place we've ever been.
So, Vern, I was wondering, what's your sense to what the American farmer's awareness is of this? I know you travel all over the country. What's your sense there?
Well, I wouldn't say they're highly aware because they're worried about the things that Mary Kay showed about. I mean, they're getting squeezed immediately with the buffering implementation outputs of the herbicide strategy and insecticide strategy. But we're taking the opportunity to make them aware. We have a grower advisory panel, which is part of the Crop Life. And so I visited with that group of farmers. They tend to be large. They're also diversified. Some are in row crops, some are in potatoes, some are in vegetables. And so they're willing to help with the importance of innovation for their operations. But that's part of the campaign that we have to build, is how do we engage the grower groups at the right times, to help us with the messaging that needs to be done with Congress, Ag Committee, USDA, and so forth. The other thing that's really important about this for those of you that are connected to minor crops. So if you think about how a regulatory package gets progressed, and you guys may have covered this earlier in the program, but you often submit a certain amount of crop groups first, get the core package approved, add other crop groups second, partly to make sure that you're aligned around the assumptions of the approval, because there's a risk up aspect of adding more crops. And when you're not getting approval of the first one, all of that gets pushed aside. And so IR4 is a minor crop organization that we've always been actively supportive of, is the organization that gets the really, really minor crops. They're also getting pushed aside because these crop group progressions are not happening. And so if you think about specialty agriculture, somebody said it earlier, they will be hit harder, not just because of the endangered species buffering type of challenges, but they will be last in line to get new innovation. And oftentimes they are more intensely farmed crops from a pest control perspective than the row crops. And they have more resistance exposure sometimes than a row crop farmer does. And so for those of you that service that group of growers, it should be a really big concern for them.
As you interface with your other industry or pesticide industries, what are you looking for the overall value for the industry going maybe 5 years from now? Is it going to be steady, or do you see upgrowth? Do you see downgrowth? Where do you all see it as a group of CEOs?
Yeah, so if you sort of think about the cycle we're in, the hard part is how long will the cycle last. We still are bullish about the future of crop protection, innovation, and revenue, provided this problem I just talked about gets addressed. You can't get there without the U.S. being productive on the innovation approval. And so we've got to deal with the realities of the market we're in. But if I showed you our P&L curve for the last 10 years, 2018 was kind of a base year. 2019 went down because of the 20 million prevent plant acres that you all remember. 2020 came back up halfway because there were still 10 million acres of prevent plant against a norm of around 3 to 4. And 21's when the breakout occurred. 22, we got growth as well. 23, the market declined a little bit. We were able to hold our business, and then we're seeing a more significant decline in 24, which is erasing a significant piece of that growth in 21 and 22 as a market. If you go back before the 2018 period, you'd see 5 to 6 years of pretty flat market, up and down single digits. And our P&L would show that we held our profitability through that period by growing share in the tough markets. And so if this cycle lasts 5 or 6 years, it won't be 5 years. My hope is that I think 25 is going to be really tough globally and here. I think we'll have an opportunity to begin rebuilding in 26. I don't think it's going to be a rocket ship, back to where we just came from, but I think we can begin to rebuild in 26, and I hope it's more of a 3-year sort of variety of the cycle, which says that when we do break out, we will have opportunities to grow revenue again. And what typically happens is people overreact to a long cycle. Nobody can afford inventory with cost of capital right now that's surplus. And so people will manage that tight, and the retailers don't want the inventory. And I promise you the suppliers can't afford to hold it because we're producing 6 months in advance of demand. And so there'll be a point, if something happens globally with drought or economically that creates a surge of demand, there will be supply constraints again. I don't think they'll be as long as they were through the COVID and some of the China regulatory constraints. But we will see that opportunity, and that will create more optimism, to invest, to build, the marketplace again. But if you go out 10 years, I think biologicals are going to be much more relevant in the 5 to 10 year window, we believe. And I say to people that 10 years from now, I think the biggest opportunity for agricultural inputs is fertilizer replacement. There's a lot of pressure on fertilizer. There's a lot of science learning, recognizing that the nutrient cycle of soil has the ability to utilize nutrients are there in a much better way than they currently do, because many of them are bound up or unavailable. And there are people working on technology to solve that problem, including Syngenta. I hope we're the ones that crack it. I happen to have the opportunity to have a lens externally. I'm on a small startup board, with a company working in soil, where I get a chance to learn a lot of things outside the company. And I don't know who's going to crack it, but somebody's going to crack it. And there are ways, for the soil nutrient cycle to be much more contributing to plant productivity in a sustainable way than what we're currently doing with our current practices with synthetic or supplemental fertilization. You can't do it across the whole marketplace, but over time, momentum will build just like a typical adoption curve. And so I think that's kind of a decade out there, and biologicals will be a contributing factor in that, especially in the soil health space.
So maybe, Vern, just what final parting words would you have for us, for the group here?
Yeah, so, it's important that we go into all of this, with a positive attitude, and you heard bits of that we've got a lot of opportunity that we can still offer farmers and retailers. And so we always remind them that, we're going to earn your business. We recognize some of the macroeconomic things and the immediate challenges. There's more concern about access to operating loans and debt, and we've got to be sharper with our segmentation. That I sort of think about farmers in two buckets for simplicity purposes. The ROI story is the one that we're most comfortable with. We invest to provide that to growers, but not every grower in this environment can spend more than what their budget is. And if they have a certain amount of spend, we've got to help them figure out how to use that spend in the smartest way with our retail partners. And so that's the way we're thinking about it. We're not giving up on selling ROI, because there's still a lot of farmers out there that are strong enough and invested enough, to think and act that way. But there is a growing group in this cycle that are going to be limited to what they have to invest. And so we're trying to adapt the way that we work with our retail partners to make sure that those choices are visible to growers. And we're very committed to brand ladders. You probably heard that this week. And we know you can get more return when you buy at the top, but there are returns that you can get at the middle, if you have a limited investment capability. And so we've just got to be more sensible about how we approach growers that have needs that might be different than they had the previous couple of years. And so we're committed to do that, and anything we can do to help all of you through the course of that change, please let us know. But thanks for your time, and thanks for being here.
All right.
The Syngenta Media Summit covered a lot of territory, and it was all about the company's advancement of innovation. So that's the ZimmCast for this week. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for listening.
You've been listening to the ZimmCast, the official podcast of AgWired. Check us out at www.agwired.com to find out what's new in agricultural marketing.